The neural feeds went silent at exactly 11:47 a.m. Galactic Standard Time. Nyx Corvain felt the absence like a physical blow, a sudden, terrifying void, where the constant stream of data had flowed through her consciousness for the past 15 years. Stock prices, weather patterns, security alerts, biometric readings from her employees. Real-time analysis of every conversation happening within a 50-kilometer radius of her corporate tower. All of it vanished in an instant. She stood frozen. In the center of her crystalline office on the 80th floor of Helix Industries, her enhanced vision flickering between normal sight and the static-filled darkness where her augmented overlays should have been. The transparent aluminum windows that normally displayed tactical information and market fluctuations now showed only the raw, unfiltered view of New Geneva's skyline stretching toward distant mountains. Director Corvain. The voice came from somewhere behind her, flat and concerned. Without her audio enhancement algorithms, she couldn't immediately identify which of her assistants was speaking. The realization sent a spike of panic through her chest. Nyx spun around, her movement clumsy without the gyroscopic stabilizers that had governed her balance for so long. 3 figures stood near her desk, faces she recognized but couldn't immediately process without the facial recognition software that had become as natural as breathing. The quantum servers are reporting massive cascade failures across all networks, one of them said. A woman, young, with short auburn hair. Her name floated just out of reach in Nyx's organic memory. We're getting reports of similar outages. In 17 sectors, the words felt muffled, distant. Without her cognitive amplifiers parsing every syllable for subtext and hidden meaning. Human speech seemed painfully slow and imprecise. Nyx pressed her palm against her temple, feeling for the familiar warmth of her neural interface ports. Were cold, dead metal. How long? She managed to ask, her own voice sounding strange and small in the vast office. Unknown? The attack seems specifically designed to target high-level neural integration systems. Anyone with basic augmentations is unaffected, but executives, military commanders, anyone with deep brain interfaces. The speaker trailed off the implication. Hanging in the air, Nyx sank into her chair. The first time she'd sat without checking 17 different threat assessment protocols first, the simple leather felt alien against her back. She tried to access her personal files, her schedules, her security feeds. Nothing. Her mind felt empty, hollow, like a vast library with all the books suddenly missing. "Ma'am, we should consider evacuation protocols," another voice suggested. A man this time, older, with silver threading through his dark hair. "If this is a precursor to a larger attack, no." The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Nyx forced herself to stand, fighting the disorientation that came with moving through space without trajectory. Calculators and collision avoidance systems. "We don't abandon the tower. We find out who did this." But even as she spoke, she knew the truth that her assistants were too polite to voice without her augmentations. She was no longer the brilliant, multitasking executive who had built Helix Industries into a galactic powerhouse. She was just a woman with organic reflexes and limited processing power, trying to navigate a world that moved at the speed of light. The intercom crackled an ancient backup system that still functioned, on hardwired connections. Director Corvain to the security office immediately. "We have a situation." As Nyx walked toward the door on unsteady legs, she caught her reflection in the darkened screen of her personal terminal. Her eyes, once bright with the constant flicker of data streams, looked dull and confused. For the first time in 15 years, she was completely, terrifyingly alone inside her own mind. The silence was deafening. Marcus Stone heard the explosion 3 seconds before the security. Alarms started wailing. He was standing in the lobby of Helix Industries, deliberately positioned where he could watch all entrances while appearing to study a holographic display of the company's mining operations. His weathered hands hung loose at his sides, but his gray eyes never stopped moving, cataloging exits, counting potential weapons, measuring distances with the kind of spatial awareness that came from 30 years of keeping people alive. The blast came from somewhere high in the tower. Not the controlled demolition of a terrorist attack, but something messiest, the sound of expensive equipment failing catastrophically. Marcus felt the vibration through the soles of his boots, transmitted up through the building's superstructure around him. The lobby erupted into chaos. Executives with neural implants stumbled like drunks, their augmented reality overlays flickering and dying. Security guards pressed hands to their ears, their communication systems screaming feedback.
Oh.
But Marcus heard something else beneath. The noise, the whisper of clothing against skin, the soft squeak of rubber soles on polished floor, the controlled breathing of someone moving with deadly purpose. He spotted them by the way they walked to steady, to calm while everyone else panicked. 3 figures in maintenance coveralls, their faces obscured by the kind of basic filter masks that wouldn't trigger facial recognition systems. They moved through the crowd like sharks through churning water, heading for the executive elevators. Marcus didn't waste time wondering who they were or what they wanted. He'd been hired by Helix's board of directors precisely because he operated on instinct rather than data analysis. While their security systems crashed and burned, his human intuition was screaming danger. He intercepted the first assassin at the elevator bank, peering beside him like a ghost. The man reached for something concealed in his coveralls, but Marcus was already moving. He grabbed the assassin's wrist, feeling the telltale bulk of a weapon beneath the fabric, and drove his elbow into the man's solar plexus. The breath rushed out of him in a whoosh, and Marcus followed up with a knee to the kidney that dropped him to the marble floor. The second assassin spun toward him, producing a sleek plasma cutter from his tool belt.
Right.
Marcus rolled behind a decorative pillar as the energy beam scorched the air where he'd been standing. He could smell ozone and melted stone. The weapon was silent except for a faint hum designed to avoid triggering audio sensors. "Buildings locked down," a voice called from across the lobby. The third assassin was speaking into an old-fashioned radio, the kind that used analog frequencies. "Target is isolated on the 80th floor. Neural dampening field is holding steady." Marcus processed this information with the cold efficiency of a man who'd survived too many ambushes to count. They'd planned this perfectly, knocked out the high-tech security systems, and trapped their target in her digital ivory tower. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed everyone in the building was dependent on technology. He waited for the plasma cutter to recharge, then moved. The second assassin was good trained, professional, probably former military. But he fought like a man accustomed to having targeting computers and threat assessment software. His moves were precise but predictable, optimized for scenarios. His implants had calculated. Marcus fought like an animal, improvised, adapted, used the environment as a weapon. He grabbed a decorative vase and hurled it not at the assassin, but at the wall behind him, creating a shower of ceramic fragments that forced the man to raise his arms defensively. In that split second of distraction, Marcus closed the distance and drove his fist into the assassin's throat. The third man was already running for the stairs, abandoning his mission now that their element of surprise was gone. Marcus let him go. His job wasn't to chase down every threat. It was to reach Nick's Corvain. Before the next wave of killers arrived, he bypassed the elevator, knowing it would be trapped or disabled, and headed for the emergency stairwell. 80 floors in a building where most people relied on anti-gravity lifts and automated transport, the stairs would be empty. It would also be a hell of a climb for a 50-year-old man with 2 artificial knees and a back held together by surgical titanium. Marcus started climbing, his breathing steady and controlled. Each step echoed in the concrete stairwell, a metronome of determination. Somewhere above him, a woman who'd never had to rely on anything but technology was learning what it might. Meant to be helpless, he'd been hired to protect her from external threats. He was beginning to realize the greatest danger might come from within. Veracross found them on the 43rd floor, huddled in an abandoned server room that still reeked of ozone and burned circuitry. Marcus Stone sat with his back to the wall, his weathered face grim but alert. Beside him, the famous Nick's Corvain looked nothing like the commanding executive from the corporate feeds. She was curled in on herself, her expensive suit wrinkled, her dark hair falling across a face that seemed years older than it had that morning. "How bad is it?" Vera asked, setting down her pack and kneeling beside them. She'd received Marcus's emergency signal 2 hours ago, coded message sent through an obsolete military frequency that most people had forgotten existed. "Neural cascade failure," Marcus replied, his voice low. "Someone hit the building with a targeted EMP burst, but it was surgical. Took out high-level augmentations while leaving basic systems intact." Vera looked at Nyx, who was staring at her hands as if she'd never seen them before. "Director Corvain? Can you hear me?" Nyx looked up, and Vera was shocked by the emptiness in her eyes. "I can hear you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I can't understand. Your micro-expressions, your vocal stress, patterns, the thermal signatures that would tell me if you're lying, it's all gone. I'm blind." Vera had seen this before, during the Neural Wars, when enemy forces used pulse weapons to disable augmented soldiers. The withdrawal was brutal, like losing half your senses overnight. Some never recovered, others learned to adapt. "Not blind," Vera said firmly. "You're just remembering how to see." Moved to the window, her trained eyes scanning the street below. Vera had been a tracker in the outer colonies before the wars, hunting smugglers and pirates through asteroid fields and derelict space stations. When neural augmentation became standard for military personnel, she'd refused the implants. Her commanders called her old-fashioned. Her targets called her impossible to shake. "Movement on the street," she reported. 3 vehicles, non-standard. Configuration: they're setting up a perimeter. She turned back to Marcus. "How many exits do we have?" "Service tunnels," he replied. "But they'll be watching those too. We need to go up, not down. Up." Nyx laughed bitterly. "In case you hadn't noticed, I can barely walk across a room without stumbling. I can't process spatial relationships without my navigation algorithms. I don't even know which direction is north." Vera crouched in front of her, close enough that Nyx could see the network of scars across the tracker's dark skin, evidence of a life lived without technological safety nets. "Close your eyes," she said. "What?" "Close your eyes. Trust me." Reluctantly, Nyx complied. Vera waited a moment, then spoke again. "What do you hear?" Voices, distant, below us. Nyx's brow furrowed in concentration. "Footsteps in the corridor. Someone's limping, their left leg dragged slightly." "Good, what else?" "Air circulation system, but it's uneven. There's a blockage in the northwest vent." Nyx's eyes snapped open. "How did I know it was northwest?" "Your inner ear," Vera explained. "Humans navigated for thousands of years before GPS. Your brain knows which way is north. You just forgot how to listen to it." She helped Nyx to her feet, noting how the executive's balance was already improving. "Your augmentations didn't make you superhuman. They made you dependent. There's a difference." Over the next hour, Vera began the process that would either save Nyx's life or break her completely. She taught her to read the building's sounds, the groan of stressed metal, the whisper of air through damaged vents, the subtle vibrations. That indicated movement on different floors. She showed her how to use shadows and reflections to see around corners, how to test surfaces with her feet before committing her weight. The human brain processes 11 million bits of information per second, Vera explained as they moved through darkened corridors. Your conscious mind only handles about 40. Your augmentations were doing the processing for you, but the capacity was always there. Nyx stumbled, caught herself, tried again. Each failure was a lesson. Each success was a small victory against the terror of her new limitations.
"Hey!"
"There," Vera whispered, pointing to a barely visible disturbance in the dust on the floor. "Someone passed through here recently. See how the particles are displaced?" Nyx stared at the floor, her untrained eyes struggling to perceive what Vera saw so clearly. Then gradually, the pattern emerged. 2 people, one heavier than the other. They were moving carefully, trying to avoid detection. Very good. Now tell me, where did they go? The trail was faint, but Nyx followed it with growing confidence. For the first time since the attack, she felt a spark of her old self returning. Not the digitally enhanced executive, but something deeper, the intelligence and determination that had built an empire before the machines took over. She was learning to be human again. Director Kane Voss stood in the executive conference room of Helix Industries, watching the city burn through floor 2 ceiling windows. The neural cascade attack had spread beyond the corporate district, leaving a trail of chaos that stretched to the horizon. Augmented citizens wandered the streets like lost children, their enhanced minds suddenly reduced to organic baseline. It was beautiful. "The board is demanding answers," said his assistant, a nervous young man whose basic implants had survived. "The pulse. They want to know why our security failed so completely." Kane turned from the window, his own enhancements functioning perfectly. Unlike the crude neural interfaces favored by most executives, his augmentations were military-grade, hardened against EMP attacks. He'd learned that lesson during his years in corporate intelligence. Before Nix Corvain had plucked him from obscurity and made him her second-in-command. "Our security didn't fail," he said calmly. "It was sabotaged." From the inside, the assistant's eyes widened. "Sir," Kane walked to the conference table, its surface still displaying tactical holographs from the morning briefing. Nix's face smiled. Up at him from a dozen different angles, security feeds, public appearances, board meetings. She looked so confident, so sure of her technological superiority. "Director Corvain represents everything wrong with human evolution," he said, touching the holographic display. The images shifted, showing Nix's neural integration timeline, 15 years of increasing dependency on artificial enhancement. "She's more machine than woman now. Her organic brain handles perhaps 10% of her cognitive function. The rest is silicon and quantum processing." "But sir, you have augmentations too. Minor tools," Kane snapped. "Weapons, they serve me, not the other way around." Nix has become a slave to her technology, and she's trying to drag our entire species down with her. Moved to his personal workstation, entering a series of commands that his assistant couldn't. See, the holographic displays changed, showing deployment patterns for security forces throughout the city. Most were struggling without their enhanced coordination systems. But a select few units were operating at full capacity. "The future of humanity lies in balance," he continued, his fingers dancing across the interface. "Augmentation should enhance human capability, not replace it." When the EMP hit, Nix became helpless. "But humans like me, like my people, we adapted. We survived." The truth was more complex than he'd ever admit aloud. Kane had loved Nix once, in the early days when she'd been brilliant but still recognizably human. He'd watched her transform herself piece by piece, trading flesh for circuitry, intuition for algorithms. Each upgrade had taken her further from the woman he'd known, till looking at her was like staring at a beautiful corpse animated by artificial intelligence. "Sir, we're getting reports that Director Corvain survived the initial attack. She's somewhere in the building with that analog bodyguard the board hired." Kane smiled. Arcastone he'd reviewed the man's file extensively. A relic from an earlier age, someone who'd refused every enhancement offer and survived by pure skill and instinct. In another context, Kane might have respected him. Today, he was simply another obstacle to remove. "Deploy teams to floors 70. Through 90, he ordered. "Full tactical gear, but no enhanced targeting systems. Stone is old school. He'll use their technology against them if they're not careful." His assistant hesitated. "What about Director Corvain? If she's captured alive, she won't be," Kane said flatly. "The neural cascade was just the beginning. Her implants are still trying to reboot, sending desperate signals to establish connection. Each attempt damages her organic brain tissue a little more. Even if we could reverse the process, she'd never be the same." Was a lie, but a useful one. The truth was that Nix could recover, given time and proper training. But recovery would mean accepting that she'd been wrong about human-machine integration. And Kane knew her pride would never allow that. It's better to end her suffering quickly and build something new from the ashes of Helix Industries. "What are your orders regarding the board?" The assistant asked. Tane pulled up another display showing the locations of Helix's remaining executives. Most were in secure bunkers, protected by the same hardened systems he'd installed in his own implants. They thought they were safe from the chaos consuming the city. They were wrong. "We're scheduling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning," he said. Tell them I have a plan to restore order and prevent future attacks. They'll be so grateful for leadership in this crisis, they won't ask too many questions about how I survived when their precious director didn't." Through the window, another section of the city went dark as its power grid failed. Kane watched. The lights die with satisfaction. Somewhere in the building below, Nyx was probably learning to walk without computer assistance. Struggling with the basic functions her enhancements had performed automatically for 15 years. Let her suffer. Let her understand what she'd given up in pursuit of technological perfection. By the time his people found her, she might even thank him for ending it. The old world was dying. A new one, properly balanced between man and machine, would rise from its ashes. And Kane Voss would be there to guide it. Juno Pike's fingers flew across the antique keyboard, each keystroke echoing in the abandoned maintenance tunnel beneath Helix Industries. The ancient computer relic from the pre-augmentation era hummed with quiet efficiency as she bypassed security system after security system. "I still can't believe you're using that thing," Marcus muttered from his position by the tunnel entrance. "It's older than I am." Juno grinned without looking up from the screen. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. This baby runs on hardwired logic circuits and copper cables. No wireless signals to jam, no neural interfaces to hack. It's invisible. To modern security." Behind them, Nyx sat on an overturned crate, her transformation over the past 6 hours remarkable to witness. The terrified executive who'd cowered in the server room was gone, replaced by someone harder, more focused. Vera's crash course in analog survival had awakened something in her, not just the ability to function without technology, but a fierce determination to reclaim what had been stolen. "How long until you can get us into the executive floors?" Nyx asked. "Already in," Juno replied, pulling up a schematic of the building's upper levels. "But we've got problems. Kane's people are everywhere, and they're using military-grade countermeasures. This isn't just corporate security anymore. It's a full coup." Marcus studied the display, his experienced eye picking out patrol patterns and defensive positions. He's consolidated power fast. Must have been planning this for months. "Years," Nyx said quietly. She was staring at her hands again, but not with the lost confusion from earlier. Now she was examining the surgical scars where her neural interfaces had been installed. Tracing the lines where flesh met technology, I should have seen it. The signs were all there, but I was too dependent on data analysis to trust my instincts. Juno finally turned from the computer, revealing a face that was younger than her voice, suggested maybe 25, with bright green eyes and short-cropped platinum hair. Her arms were covered in tattoos that looked like circuit diagrams until you realized they were actually living vines and flowers. "Your boy Kane made one crucial mistake," she said. "He thinks like a military strategist. Control the high ground, isolate the enemy, force a surrender. But this isn't a battlefield. It's a corporate tower, and corporate towers have back doors." She pulled up another schematic, this one showing the building's service areas and maintenance shafts. "I've been mapping Helix's infrastructure for 3 years, ever since they bought out my father's tech company and buried his patents. There are ways to move through this building that don't appear on any official blueprints." "Why help us?" Vera asked, her tracker's instincts still suspicious of their young ally. "What's in it for you?" Juno's expression hardened. Kane isn't just targeting Nyx. The neural cascade attack hit half the city's population. Doctors, teachers, artists, anyone with enhancement implants. "My girlfriend was at the university when it hit. She's in a coma now, her brain caught between organic and artificial processing." She stood up, shouldering a pack filled with jury-rigged electronics. "I want the antidote, and I want Kane to pay for what he's done." The journey through the building's hidden passages was like navigating a 3-dimensional maze. Them through spaces never meant for human occupation, gaps between walls, service crawlways, abandoned construction zones from the tower's various expansions over the decades. Nyx struggled at first, her body still adjusting to movement without gyroscopic assistance. But Vera's lessons had taken root. She learned to read the building's sounds and vibrations, to anticipate obstacles before her conscious mind registered them. Most importantly, she learned to trust her companions in a way she'd never trusted her technology. Contact ahead, Marcus whispered as they approached the executive floors. Through a ventilation grate, they could see 2 guards positioned. Outside Kane's office, both wore the distinctive black armor of corporate intelligence operatives. I can take them, Vera said. But Nick shook her head. No, this is my company, my responsibility. She looked at her companions, the analog bodyguard, the wilderness tracker, the young hacker who fought the system with antique computers and righteous anger. For 15 years, I let machines make my decisions. I forgot what it meant to lead. She moved toward the grate, her movements now fluid and confident. Kane thinks he's won because he took away my augmentations. But he didn't take away my brain. And he didn't account for something his military training never taught him. What's that? Juno asked. Nick smiled, and for the first time since the attack, it reached her eyes. The most powerful force in the universe isn't artificial intelligence or quantum processing or neural enhancement. It's human beings choosing to trust each other. She pushed open the grate and stepped into the corridor, ready to face the man who tried to steal her humanity. Behind her, 3 people who had every reason to walk away instead chose to follow her into the fire. Da! Final confrontation was about to begin,